Hello and welcome to the Marketing Guides for Small Business podcast. I'm Ian Cantle from Outsourced Marketing. And as usual, we have Ken Tucker and Paul Barthel from Chainscape Web and Jeff Steck from Tylerica Marketing Systems out of Texas. So, guys, today we're going to get real on the topic of how to generate more leads. Whether you're a startup just getting off the ground or an established business looking to expand your reach, understanding the art and the science of lead generation is absolutely key to driving more growth and increasing your customer base and ultimately your business's profitability. So guys, I thought it would be really insightful to do a roundtable discussion today on a variety of topics about lead generation. Each of us brings a unique perspective and experiences and serves different types of clients. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation we'll generate today and the thoughts you guys bring. So without further ado, let's jump in. So I'm going to roundtable it. I'll prompt you guys, but as usual, feel free to jump in anytime. But the first question I wanted to ask each of you is, what's your advice for how businesses can generate more leads? And we'll start off with Ken.
All right. Yeah, thanks. So the very first thing I want to talk about is the quality of the offer. This is where, I mean, honestly, if you have an uninteresting or bad offer or no offer, apparent offer, you might as well save your money, because you may get lucky, you may get a little bit of business, but this is where 90% of businesses fail. They don't think about the offer, and yet they turn around and they spend money to drive traffic to that offer. So the offer is absolutely critical. When you're looking at generating leads, you need to have a traffic source or traffic sources. So you need to go to what we call the traffic store. You need to look at where are people going to, get traffic from to drive people to become a lead. And it could be your website. It could be, a postcard that you send out, like we talked about, a printed publication like we talked about last week. It could be Google ads. It could be an SEO strategy. It could be a whole bunch of things, but you have to decide based on who your ideal client is and what do they want, what problem do they need to solve, what your offer needs to be to get them interested, curious, and to start down that path where then you can nurture them through a sales funnel strategy to get to the point where they raise their hand, they express interest, and then you stay top of mind with them. You nurture them through the natural buying cycle, as we talk about through duct tape with the marketing hourglass: know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer, to the point where they're ready to raise their hand and say, I want to schedule an appointment, or I'm ready to buy. Either one, is an outcome. So I think it's really important to define the process. Interestingly, I spent this weekend working on 3 different sales funnels for my business. And I do this, fairly often. I'm amazed at how much time and effort it took me to build these funnels where they were already fairly well formed. But you're talking about a multi-dimensional solution, an omni-channel solution to make this happen. You got to have, now one of the things I haven't done yet is I haven't worked on the traffic, but I need to kind of take a step back. I'm confident I've got a good offer, but I need to make sure that I figure out who really needs that offer the most, and then that's how I'm going to factor in my traffic strategy to target the right people. But those things aside, to build the landing page, to have the lead magnet, the tripwire, whatever it might be, to get people to give you information that, they're ready to learn more, or they're ready to book a consultation. Then, the email series to deliver the asset, to remind them to show up for the appointment that they booked, whatever it might be. And then once they do that, how do you nurture them from the point where, okay, well, we had a great consultation. It was a free consultation. It wasn't anything that you were buying at that point in time. How do you get them to the point where they're like, okay, you're the company I want to buy from? So, all of that takes a massive amount of work. And I think a lot of businesses, they try to look at lead generation like it's the easy button. And yeah, you can get away with some of that. You can slap up a landing page and run a Google ad or a Facebook ad and drive traffic, and you're going to get some conversion, but you're pissing money away when you just do that. To the point where most businesses that we've seen try to do that ultimately get really frustrated, and then they say, well, this just doesn't work. So I've rambled on and on. I mean, but those are kind of the things. One thing I do want to talk about though is really great insight that I kind of learned. I didn't learn, but it really kind of came to my attention again this week was, a lot of people, we talk about solving problems that people have, and that's absolutely critical. But sometimes they don't even know what the problem is. They know the symptom, and so you have to think about the nature of who is your ideal or likely customer. How do they describe what their problem is? Do they even know that it is the problem, or can they just describe the symptoms or the pains that they're having, but they can't really articulate the problem yet? And then you have to bake that into your strategy to show them that, yeah, you do have the solution and this is the problem that they're having. And you got to paint the outcome of what they're going to want to see.
Yeah. Yeah. You covered a lot there, Ken. I think you're so right. Like a lot of people, when they're first dipping their toe into lead generation, they don't even think about, what is it that I want people to do once I attract their attention.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, let's just do some paid ads, send them to the homepage, right? Like
Right.
that's really bad strategy and really lazy, right? Because they just want, it's more like I'm going to dream it and it's going to happen, and that's not the way marketing works.
Right. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, it's a lot of people, they just slap stuff up. It's basically like, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. Hey, because you see me, you're buying from me, right? And it doesn't usually work that way.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the other interesting things you said was about the problems you solved. And what I think I always find fascinating, and maybe you can just touch on this a little bit, is that because we're marketers and we're trying to drill very deep and understand their target audience that they're trying to reach. Sometimes the actual client that we're serving hasn't even delved that deeply into their audience's pain points. They feel they're up at a surface level when they may be much lower. And so how do you help people like that? How do you start to delve the depths of pain points in order to understand them? And are there different pain points through the buyer's journey as well?
Oh, sure. There are different pain points throughout the buyer's journey, no doubt about it, or at least articulated in different ways. Um, I love the way StoryBrand kind of keeps it simple, and it focuses on internal, external, and philosophical. And uh, again, here's the great news for most small businesses. If you just put a little bit of work into this to identify the internal, external, and philosophical problem, and you write to that, and those are actually the real problems that people have. Now, that just because you define them doesn't mean that it's actually people have to have the need to buy what you're selling, not you just selling what you want to sell, right? So but looking at external, internal, and philosophical is a great way to get started. External, I know you do a lot of dental marketing, and I think the easiest example for me is probably because I can personalize a little bit. is from with a dentist. External problem, I've got a toothache. Internal problem, I get really anxious when I go to the dentist. I want somebody who's going to actually address that problem every bit as much as solve my external problem, which is my toothache. And then the philosophical problem is just this big overarching problem. Hey, it's 2024. It shouldn't be that hard to have anxiety-free dentistry or whatever. And so you start there. But I may not be your ideal customer, as that dentist, right? So you need to explore, and I think one of the best ways to do it is to interview some of your best customers to find out, why did they choose you? Why are they still sticking with you?
Yeah.
And let them tell you in their words, not your words, why they feel like you are the solution.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Thanks, Ken. Moving on to you, Paul. So what's your advice for how businesses can generate more leads?
Well, I think Ken pretty much covered it. But
okay, well,
what I would say is, Ken talked about an offer and they don't think about the offer. Well, sometimes they do think about the offer and they just refuse to have one. And we see that all the time, and that's a huge problem, especially if your competitor has an offer and you don't. Guess what? You just put yourself at a competitive disadvantage. So, and the other thing is, if you're paying to drive traffic, and like you said, what are you doing? Send them to the homepage? Or are you sending them to a landing page? And you need to have calls to action throughout that landing page. Having a phone number in the upper right corner isn't enough. You need to have calls to action throughout that landing page. Phone numbers, buttons, call us now, fill out the form below. Because you have to tell people what to do. Okay, that sounds bad, but it's kind of like reviews. Okay, if you don't ask for reviews, you're just leaving it to chance, and you're probably not going to get them, or at least not as many as you need. So, have these calls to action and actually have an offer. So send them to a landing page. Tell them what to do. But yeah, I think Ken pretty much covered it. I mean, I'm not sure what more I can add to it.
Yeah, I mean, Paul, you bring some good points up. Not everybody's ready to buy from you right away, right? So
yeah,
you have to give people two options. You're going to have people who are like, my tooth hurts so bad, I just need to find the first dentist that's going to be able to get me in and take care of my problem. And then you've got other people that are like, my tooth hurts, but I've got some Ambisol on it and it's kind of taking the pain down, and I can take a look, and it's like, I like this dentist because they talk about these things that are important with the way I feel, not just from the pain perspective, but psychologically. And so maybe you're willing to wait an extra day to go to that appointment, because of what that person said, or maybe it's because you downloaded a little checklist that they helped you say, if you're experiencing, shortness of breath, or, you feel a little queasy in your stomach, then you're probably anxious when you go to the dentist. I'm just making stuff up now, but if they give you a guide that helps you articulate and more deeply understand your problem without you having to fully commit, then you've given people those two options where now you can say, hey, thanks for reading our guide saying, the anxious patient, here's our assurance, and here's why we take your needs into consideration through a follow-up email. That's probably going to get them to convert and go ahead and book that appointment. I don't know if that makes sense for your market, Ian, but
here's 2 breathing exercises to help you prepare for your dental treatment.
Yeah, exactly.
I think one other thing I would add, and Ken mentioned this too, is what's on your landing page. Because a lot of times you go to a website, you go to a landing page, and it's all about, here's why we're so great. But they don't talk to how can they solve your problem? And is that on your landing page if you're paying to drive traffic? Understand how things work. I mean, you don't have to have this super deep understanding, but have a general understanding of how these things work. You know, a lot of times it's like, well, gee, I paid for an ad and somebody clicked on it, but they didn't convert. Well, okay, what's on your landing page? And are you talking about how you solve their problems, like Ken talked about? And do you have facts on your landing page? Because a lot of times that ad might be the first interaction that someone has with your business. So they're not going to, chances are they're not going to immediately convert. So if you have facts on your, frequently asked questions on your landing page, that helps them get more information and talk about the problems you solve. And we lost Ken. And
he's fighting allergies, so I think he'll be back.
But yeah, like I said, we talk about strategy all the time. If you don't have some kind of strategy, and that doesn't mean like for a small business you have to spend $10,000 on a marketing strategy necessarily, but you can't just throw mud against the wall either.
Yep. He's back. Awesome. Thanks, Paul. What about you, Jeff? You've been sitting patiently waiting to share your thoughts.
I took a little different tack. And first off, I want to say thanks for proposing this format. I think roundtables are great. And, of course, you sent the questions out in advance, so we got a chance to think about it. I took a very different tack on my responses than Ken did, which is kind of cool about this format. But it dovetails into it a lot. And I kind of approached it a little more of philosophically almost. And that's, of course, we're all duct tape marketers. We're big on strategy first. Yeah, start with the strategy first. You've got to know who you're trying to reach, who's your ideal client, what are their pain points, how do they think about things, and then where they get their information from. And then leverage that into your lead generation capabilities. So once you know that, then I think you need to be everywhere your target audience is. If they're not on LinkedIn, don't bother trying to generate leads on LinkedIn. If they're not on Facebook, don't bother with Facebook. If they don't read emails, don't bother with emails. You got to figure out what resonates with them, where they get their information, what they're going to pay attention to. And as Ken said, as Paul said, you got to focus on their problems and make it about them. And as you draw them in, that becomes increasingly more important. Very top of funnel brand awareness. It can be a little bit about you, but still you got to figure out how to tap into, what are people looking for? And as you draw them in, then you can switch to talking a little bit more about your reputation and your unique value proposition, because you still have to differentiate, right? But we're still in the strategy. Who's your ideal client? What do you want to tell them that's different from what everyone else is telling them? So be thinking about that as part of your lead generation, and then be thinking about how you spin that as the answer to their problems that they're looking for. In the hero's journey kind of scenario, it's setting yourself up to be the mentor, the trusted advisor, not bludgeoning people over the head with why you're so great. I think when you use all the tools available, be everywhere your target audience is, and take that approach with the messaging, you can be much more successful at generating leads from it. I worked for a lot of years. People I know my backstory. I know I worked for a lot of years with a house painting company. And one of the things that we saw was that if we look at the whole pie of where all the leads came from, it was about 1/3 referrals, 1/3 repeat business, and 1/3 all the other things we spend money on marketing. So, we talk about a lot of lead generation. That's the marketing and the things we spend money on. But don't forget that culturing, a mindset of repeat business and a mindset of referrals is important too. So be intentional about a referral program, be intentional about staying in touch with people, and looking for, repeat businesses. And for some businesses, that's more important than others. Certainly, a big transaction, one and done, they don't see you for a while. Well, you still want to stay in touch with people because you want referrals. A hair salon, constantly, reminding people, hey, it's been 3 weeks. Come on back in. It's time for a cut. I need to go probably tomorrow. And then, be intentional about working those other programs. It's not just paid ads. It's not just what you say on social media. It's all the things working together. That's why we talk about marketing systems. It's right in our business name. And then the last thing I say would be personable, be visible, get out of the office, talk to people. And that get out of the office can be virtually. It can be, a webinar online. It can be Zoom meetings. It can be office hours. But you can't just be in the business with your head down, working on your tube or doing whatever you do to run your business. Or even if you're in home services, if you're the plumber, if you're out, solving plumbing problems, you can't only be visible to the couple of people that have already decided to work with you today. You need to be visible to all the people who might want to work with you in the future. So that means cultivating that personality and that visibility, whether it's through YouTube or going to networking meetings or putting on webinars or showing up at home shows. I think there's a lot of be the authentic voice and the authentic face of the business as well. That will help draw people in and increase the overall effectiveness of any lead generation program.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of thought on, Ken, you've been doing homework on yours, and I've been doing a lot of thought on our lead generation right now, because we don't do a lot of trade show exhibitions, but we do have an opportunity. One is coming to our town. It's a dental one that is rare. And so we're taking the opportunity and we're exhibiting. And so, of course, you think about, first of all, how do you attract attention amidst the chaos of a trade show floor? But then also, what is the point of us being there? What, you have to think through exactly what you guys were talking about from a strategy standpoint, to the offer, to, what the follow-up mechanisms are, lead capture, how are you capturing the lead? So it's kind of this microcosm, of what we do for our clients all the time and what we do online as well for our lead generation purposes. But I'm just finding it kind of a fun activity to, first of all, explore some new things. But I think businesses that, think lead generation is just this one type, it's online advertising or something like that, they're missing a lot of opportunities, because they need to think holistically about those ideal customers they're trying to attract.
Yeah. Jeff, you made a great point, about two items that should be in the traffic store that I think most people forget about. And that is the referrals and the requests for repeat business. Those are, fantastic traffic sources that are underutilized. And, it's like, even if you're like, you're talking about the house painter, somebody came in and did interior painting. Well, you know what? They still have a deck. They still have maybe a fence. They still have, the exterior of their house. If depending on if the painter does power washing. So there's still other services that you could be offering. Just because somebody did make a purchase recently doesn't mean that they're going to remember, oh, you know what? I need to call them because they do exterior painting as well. You need to, you don't assume that they're going to remember that. You need to help them.
Right.
And so, you do that through putting together, a consistent strategy and like you said, a system. And then, leveraging strategic partners is another great way. As a roofing contractor's out there, maybe you have a partnership with them. They don't paint, you don't roof. All right. But they see that somebody needs some exterior work done, then, and they're, there's an opportunity there for a partnership.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. We're gonna move on to the next question and do another round table. And so this question is about, so we've attracted leads. Now we have to convert leads, because if you don't convert leads, you're just, as Ken talked about earlier, you're just wasting your money, right? So we want to talk about converting leads into customers is absolutely critical. What advice do you guys have for businesses to convert more leads into customers? Because that's something you should be tracking as well. So we'll start off with Paul.
Yeah, there's a couple things, but to kind of follow up on what Jeff was talking about is staying in touch with your current customers, because, that may not be a new lead, but if you're in a industry that has a lot of repeat business and you're not staying in touch with your customers, then you're let's just say you're leaving a lot of money on the table. But the and Jeff talked about a referral network. Referrals. If you're a remodeling contractor, there's probably not a whole lot of repeat business there because those are expensive projects. And if someone does a kitchen remodel, they may want to do a bathroom remodel, but if they just spent $40,000 remodeling their kitchen, they're probably not going to call you 2 weeks later and say, "Hey, I want to do my bathroom." Probably not going to happen. But more directly to your question is follow up. And I don't mean 3 weeks later, because you see that a lot of times with small businesses. They'll get a form fill, or someone will fill out, they'll submit a text or a widget on the website, and 3 weeks later they decide to follow up. Well, they've already moved on. Okay. And that's where marketing automation can help you. Even like we talk about missed call text back, because a lot of small business, it may be someone they're out in the field and they can't answer the phone right there, or they have one person in the office and they can't answer 3 phone calls at once. So having some kind of missed call text back with marketing automation can help with that, because at least you're getting back to them.
Yeah, so that's similar to what Jay Bear was talking about, right? Speed to response. So even if the first response is simply to say, "Hey, we got your message, we're going to be following up with you," he was even sharing how statistically that sets you apart from everybody else who just sits on a lead and doesn't respond immediately.
Yep. Mm-hmm. It can be a scroll stopping event, where they're not going to keep scrolling to look for the next business, because even though you couldn't answer their call live, you did get back to them, and they know, and that may buy you enough time to actually have that first real conversation.
And give them a time frame. Say, we'll get back to you within 30 minutes or an hour or whatever, because that way they know. If you just say, "Hey, thanks for contacting us, we'll get in touch with you." Okay, when?
Someday. Well, and
then make sure you do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Keep those small promises, because you're proving that you can do that, right? For the big promises. One of the interesting things I found with clients we have who have, these large kind of one-off purchases, but they offer other services that the client may be interested in over time after they recover from that large home purchase, like windows and doors and that kind of stuff, right? Is that they make this assumption in their mind, the business owners make an assumption in their mind that those people will come back to them first if they have this other purchasing decision, even if it's for windows and doors again. And one of the things I try to educate them on is, if you're not putting in the work to stay top of mind with those people, like, they don't live in a vacuum, and they're being bombarded by messages every day, every week. And if they start researching again about a particular service and you're not there, you've just diminished the chances. Even though you're a proven commodity in their mind, you won't be top of mind, and you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. And I think people forget about that, right? They think, we've won those guys before. If they come back, it's only because they love us. But a lot of times it's because of all the other marketing we're doing on their behalf that we're keeping them top of mind through email marketing, ads, social media, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Jeff, what about you?
Yeah. So from a philosophical point of view, make it all about them, right? You're not going to draw people in. You're not going to convert them to, that know, like, and trust them deciding to do business with you. If you try and make it all about you, especially early on, that old saying, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care, kind of comes into play. But tactically speaking, I think, some often overlooked tactics that can make a big difference. Again, staying top of mind, creating all those touch points. It used to be you need 7 touches to get somebody's attention. Now it's more like, 17, maybe I've seen studies as many as 50, depending on the market that you're in the niche. It's because people are being bombarded with so much information. So how do you create some more of those touch points? I think retargeting is a good tactic that's often overlooked. And retargeting is, if somebody visits your website, then they start seeing ads.
It's
If
just
they're
a
on Facebook, they see ads on Facebook. Yeah, it's just a coincidence. That's right.
Yeah.
Privacy is an illusion, right? If you're online, things are being tracked and measured and used, and AI is going to both accelerate that and hopefully make it more relevant. But retargeting online and offline, there are ways that if somebody visits your website, they can get a postcard in the mail. Wow, look at that. I was on a car dealer website looking at red sports cars, and I just happened to get a postcard from that car dealer featuring a red sports car. That can be done. So I think, retargeting is worth looking at. Reducing friction, we're talking about the importance of landing pages, the importance of offers, but you also got to make it super easy for people. And when we talk about reducing friction, that's to make it easy. And here's one of the examples I use. I worked with a client once who, to get conversation with sales guys, they drove traffic to the website, and then they wanted people to fill out a form, and the form was going to get routed to the sales guy, who would then, or probably not even the sales guy, probably an intermediary, who was then going to call them to set an appointment for a conversation with the sales guy. People don't want to do that. I mean, they want to go on the website, pick the time that works for them, and it's on their calendar, right? Reduce friction, make it easy for people. And then just keep going. Don't give up. That number of touch points that I talked about just a minute ago, statistically speaking, most salespeople give up after the third try. So if it takes 7, 15, 20, 50 touches to get somebody to decide to do business with you, and you give up after the third try, what's missing here? Just keep going. Make them tell no. Make them unsubscribe. Don't be obnoxious about it. I mean, do it tactfully. But make them tell no. People will let you know. They'll vote with their unsubscribes. They'll vote with their do not calls. They'll let you know. Be appropriate. Be tactful. But just keep after them. Be tenacious. And all those things. You spent money on the initial contact. Keep going with building the the follow-ups and working people down the funnel. And again, keep in mind that it is, a progression. It's not a proposed marriage on the first date kind of situation. You've got to drive. I mean, in some cases, if somebody has that toothache that they've got to see a emergency dentist this afternoon, maybe it is. But in a lot of cases, people are doing their homework. They're figuring it out, and keep working on them. And once you spend that money to get the lead initially, keep after them until they tell you no.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the conversations that seems to pop up fairly often with clients, especially when we're building out websites and thinking about the lead generation, lead nurturing, lead capture, that kind of stuff, is the length of forms. So you talked about, reducing friction. And yeah. I don't think I've ever had a client that has minimized the number of form fields. And so the conversation is always like, studies have shown the maximum number of form fields you should ever have, if possible, is 7. But depending where somebody is in their buyer's journey, 2 form fields might be maximum, right? Do you guys find that as well?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The less you ask for, the more you get. There's one other thing I had in my notes that I glossed over. I want to circle back to real quick. And that's keeping up with changes in the marketplace, and especially changes among your ideal clients in terms of what they want or need. Things change over time, right? If you're still running the same messaging and the same offers as you were, 10 years ago or 5 years ago, even 2 years ago, you might be out of touch with your market. And if you're not getting all the leads you want, it may be because you need to revisit how you're approaching the marketplace and what you're telling them and what you're asking people to do.
That's a great point, Jeff. Yeah, it's easy to stumble into that, right? You get kind of comfortable in having your systems in place that you don't, some businesses might invest, but they don't want to invest again, right? Because it was costly.
Especially, if you're a business, small business, and you're in do-it-yourself mode, it's like, I don't have time for that. It's set up, it's running. I got other things to do, right? Yep. And you got to pay attention to it. You got to track it. You got to see if the effectiveness is dropping off, and maybe look at why. And you got to look at, are you still relevant to your marketplace? I mean, there are businesses out there that are still, I just advertise in the Yellow Pages. Who uses Yellow Pages anymore?
Yeah. What about you, Ken? Lead conversion.
Yeah. So the first thing is, Jeff was talking about retargeting.
Mhm.
I think, this is for all industries across the web. So it's obviously going to be different if you're a restaurant or an emergency service driven business versus a car dealership or something like that. But the average website visitor only converts 4% of the time on the first visit across all websites. So that's why remarketing is important. It's a form of nurture to get people to, to kind of move. Now they're not even a lead yet, but they're a potential lead. But
And it's
the
so
other,
cheap.
yeah, it is. It is
So
very
cheap
cheap.
because
Yeah,
you're only paying for going after the people that have been to your site, right?
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And they're typically done with display ads,
Yeah.
banner ads, which are cheaper, even still in the overall scheme of online marketing. Make sure you plug. Look, every website is a leaky bucket, unless you go through a very thorough process. You may drive people to your website from your Facebook page, from your Google business profile. They may be even contacting your business through those channels, and you're getting leads that you're not even paying attention to. And so I'm a big fan of collecting those all in a single place. And that's where a quality customer relationship management system is going to come into place. Is it's going to give you the ability to capture all of these leaky bucket features across your entire digital profile and capture them in a single place that makes it easier to respond and to respond quickly, as Paul was talking about through automation. So I think that's really important. I think the critical thing is, you got to think about nurture. How do you nurture people to the point where they're ready to take action? And, what information are they looking for? You need to anticipate this to kind of look, the buyer has control of the buyer's journey. They've had control for a very long time. And if we as marketers think that we have control, we're kidding ourselves. We can influence it. We can make it tighter. We can make it maybe more effective by anticipating and putting the work in through strategy and putting the right systems in place. But it's like, is it common for them to have an objection? Before they make a purchase decision? What do they need to know before they're ready to even raise their hand and say, I want to talk to a person about something? That's different than somebody who's like, okay, I've done my research. I've read 10 blog posts on their website. I've watched 4 how-to videos. I've read, oodles of reviews. I'm just ready to hit the buy button. Well, you know what? Those are all still nurture points that should be designed with intentionality. And um, a lot of people think of converting, through what we talk about a nurture series of emails and follow-ups, based on actions that people express to raise their hand and say, yeah, I'm interested in learning more about your business, but I'm not ready to buy yet. Well, that's where your nurture email strategy comes in, testimonial from a customer, overcoming objections, talking about why you're different and how you solve the problem and how you understand their problem, or maybe even how you help them identify and understand their problem. You need to do all of that before they're probably ready to purchase from you. So, online marketing is really, it's all about education and helping your customer find the best way to solve their problem in the most frictionless way. But in order to do that, you have to understand their before state and paint the after state to where they want to go or what they want to achieve. And so that's where I think most businesses fail when it comes to the whole process of converting somebody from just a lead to becoming a customer.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the interesting conversion things I've observed is where businesses who have office hours, of course, most of us do, decide to get a call center to support them in after hours or even when it's extremely busy time, or lunch times, that kind of stuff, where they have a call center answering their calls. And I think this is really key, because usually the top conversions that we're looking for as businesses are, appointments would be stellar, right? Somebody booking an appointment. But oftentimes it's a phone call or a form fill. And if somebody doesn't answer your phone, you've lost a hot opportunity. And so they hire call centers. And I've noticed, because we do call tracking and call monitoring and that kind of stuff, with some of our clients who have tried this, is that if you're not super careful about, first of all, who you hire from a call center standpoint, and equip them properly to answer the phones with the proper name. I've heard those where the same person on the same call will say the name 3 different ways, and but it's really about how do you take that call and continue to move them and convert them ultimately to the next step, right?
Yeah.
So I think that leads nicely into.
I've got one other thing.
No.
Yeah, we got to talk about AI chatbots. I mean,
is this the place? Because we're going to talk about trends and stuff like that later on. You want to talk about it?
I think you want. Okay, so let's talk about it in this context, and then we'll circle back to that.
Sure.
Have a good set of frequently asked questions, and have a good set of should ask questions, because that's going to be really valuable in guiding people from the state that they're in, understanding it better, recognizing what the right solution is, and then taking action to hire your business for the product or solution that you offer.
Yep. Don't disagree. And I think that leads into the question after the next question. So
Right.
let's talk about the next question, because I think I always find that this is very insightful, because we can often see challenges and problems easier sometimes than solutions. So guys, in your experience, and we'll start with Jeff, but what mistakes have you seen businesses doing that they should avoid in their lead generation activities?
Yeah, I think we already hit on a couple of them
Sure.
in the sense of what should you do, but let's just reiterate them here for what shouldn't you do. I think, again, not having clarity around who you're trying to attract, your ideal client, their pain points, their concerns, how they look at the world, because you got to frame everything you do around that, right? If you truly want to connect with them, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about making connection to move them along the funnel, the pipeline.
It's all about the audience, right?
It's all about the audience. Yeah. So you've got to have that clarity in the strategy first. We'll just keep hammering in that all the time. Virtually every time I've gotten pulled in to do something that's just a tactic, it has not gone as well as we all would have liked, because they didn't have that clarity. They didn't have the what's next. They didn't have the good landing pages, as Paul talked about earlier. So it's clarity around who you're trying to attract, what's going to work for them, what do they need to hear about, what are they looking to hear about, and then having a good story around that and a good smooth progression taking them down the funnel of what's next. Don't, as I think I said earlier, don't propose marriage on the first date.
Yep.
People aren't ready for that. You've got to connect and draw them in and build your credibility, the know, like, and trust. And then the other, I think, big mistake I see is, I mentioned earlier, not keeping up with changes, but the other one is businesses, especially on somewhat limited budgets, tend to want to put all their eggs in one basket, or they want to do a peanut butter spread of a thin layer of resources going everywhere. And neither of those are good. You've got to have the right set of tactics operating at the right level, which means the appropriate budget for them. If you're trying to build business on $5 a day on Google Ads, you're probably not going to do it. If you have a $5,000 a month budget, you're trying to be on Google Ads and Facebook ads and direct mail, and it's probably not going to go far enough, right? So you need to pick the appropriate mix of tactics, more than one. Don't put all the eggs in one basket, and then operate the system at the level that's appropriate for what you need. And Ken was talking earlier about building funnels, and that's something we all do. And part of that is an analysis of, you're trying to get a certain number of leads out of the bottom, what's the drop off at each level? Work your way backwards. And how many sales calls do you need to have? How many appointments need to be set up, how many ads need to be clicked on, how many impressions are needed on ads. And that same kind of methodology works for all aspects of the channel. But you need to intentionally design the lead generation machines to get you the result you want, and then make sure that how you operate them in the budget is consistent with the results you want to get.
Yeah. I'm still stuck on your comment about, those wimpy sandwiches, because it's lunchtime and, we're getting a little hungry here. But yeah, you need sandwiches with meat in them or a lot of peanut butter.
Yeah, I make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. My wife goes, "How much are you putting on there?"
Exactly. It's gotta balance out the bread.
That's right. That's right. All things need to be working balance.
Yep.
Paul, what about you? Mistakes you've seen or mistakes businesses should avoid when it comes to lead gen?
Well, everything we've been talking about that you should do, the opposite of that is probably what you should not do. But a few things that if you do have a nurture email sequence, okay, make it easy for people to unsubscribe if they want to. I know we've talked about that before, but if I get an email and I want to unsubscribe and I hit that unsubscribe and then it wants me to fill out a form and go to the website and go to your settings and all this other crap, you just got marked as spam. I'm not going to jump through hoops to unsubscribe from an email. It should be one click.
And immediate. All right. How many times have you gotten one that says, "Oh, you'll be unsubscribed sometime in the next 7 days"? It's like, wait a minute, what? These are computers. Things happen that fast, right?
Yeah.
So things like that are, and if you are, and maybe this is just me, but if you're sending out, email marketing, don't send that out at 11 o'clock at night. I mean, that's just annoying.
Or text messages are even worse.
Oh yeah, those are even worse. Absolutely.
That's horrible.
But
awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Awesome. What about you, Ken?
Not preparing for success. What do
you mean by that?
So, I not to say that this is the right strategy or tactic, but just, I look at what happened with so many businesses with Groupon. And, Groupon is, it's a thing in and of itself that, we could talk about on and on and on. But one of the problems that happened with a lot of businesses with Groupon is they got overwhelmed by response to the point where they could no longer deliver. In some cases, it cost them and they had to go out of business because they simply couldn't buy the materials that they needed to be able to do their job. But in other cases, they got so overwhelmed that they couldn't keep up and satisfy people in a fast enough manner, like if you were a restaurant. So if you're going to do something, you need to prepare to fail, but you also need to be prepared to succeed. And so I think that that's a really important thing when, if you're going to be running a Google ad campaign where you're trying to drive X number of new leads per month, or whatever you're doing to drive leads, make sure that you have the capacity to deal with and respond with those leads in a timely and an appropriate manner. Otherwise, you may be making your situation worse.
There's one thing I want to riff on. I know we need to move on in the interest of time, but match your channels to your desired results too. And you're mentioning Groupon triggered that. In the house painting world, I saw competitors offer $39 room paints. And that was, first off, they weren't making any money because of what Groupon kept, but their hope was that they could get out there and somebody would want more than one room paint and they could upsell on the spot.
Right.
But the people that are buying those $39 one room repaint deals are not going to have their entire house painted. They're looking for a bargain basement cheap deal. So make sure you match your offers and how you present things with the channels and the mindsets that people are in on those channels too.
Yeah. The other thing I want to go back to offer is, a lot of people think when you use the word offer, it's immediately a discount, or something like that.
Doesn't have to be.
An offer doesn't have to be. It could be a bundle. It can be a solution of things that you've curated and put together to solve a problem in a way that somebody else hasn't. It may need to be a discount depending on your market, the competitors, what's going on, but it doesn't. But I think people always think offer equals discount, and it should be offer equals value and perceived value and needed value of your ideal customer.
Mhm.
Yeah. The next question, I don't think we're going to need to spend too much time on, because I think we've touched it fairly often, but I don't want to gloss over it because I think it's so important and it's often overlooked to a great degree. Ken, you talked about how there's a buyer's journey, and one framework for that is the marketing hourglass, which is you need to know someone, to like someone, to trust someone, or to try someone, to buy from someone, to repeat and refer, right? Know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, refer. And in each of those steps, as consultants, we guide people that you have to first understand what the buyer's needs are, that what they're looking for, where they look for that kind of information. But then from the business's side, you need to understand how do you meet them and provide what they're looking for. So I don't want to gloss over this, but maybe we can each go through this briefly, and I'll start with you, Ken. But from a generating leads standpoint and understanding the buyer's journey standpoint, how are you seeing businesses effectively move prospects through that buyer's journey?
Yeah, I mean, you have to understand what that buyer's journey is, number one. But then, it's like you try to package the elements that need to go into each phase of the buyer's journey so that they kind of feed into each other. As an example, maybe the first time people learn about your business is from a Google ad. They're unless it's an emergency service, they're probably not going to buy from you on that first visit to your website. I mean, overwhelming statistics are going to show that they're not going to do that. But then if they see you on Facebook, or they see a remarketing ad, or they're doing a search and they see your business pop up on the Google Maps results, and they click through and they read, a blog article on your website, you're putting the pieces together in place to recognize, as people are moving through the buyer's journey, how they have to know you exist first, and then they need to, like you said, they have to start to like you and trust you. And, so you just really want to, that's why I love omnichannel, because it gives you the ability to, to kind of not simplify, but better define maybe the buyer's journey, and make sure that you have the right content to help make that as slippery as possible.
Yeah, great points. And it's probably a good time just to remind people that rarely do people make decisions just by logic or just by emotion, right? All the stats show that it's this combination, and everybody's a little bit different, but you need to appeal to both the logic and the emotion in order to support that decision in people's minds.
Yeah, it comes down to, to the type of problem that they have. I mean, we've talked about this before. The elements of value pyramid, I think, is really helpful here. If somebody has an existential problem, then they're probably in a situation where they're going to need to move faster to make that decision, and unless it's a really big ticket item. Whereas if it's something that, is just kind of make your neighbor jealous because you bought the hottest sports car, you got the new Tesla truck or whatever, that may require a little bit more research or a little bit more thought, and it's usually not going to be a spur of the moment decision.
Yeah. Awesome. What about you, Jeff? Uh-oh. Are you frozen?
He's frozen.
Okay. Well, why don't we move on to Paul? What about you, Paul?
So if I'm a little sluggish responding, it's probably my end.
Yeah, I think that when we talk about the buyer's journey, that this day and age, by the time someone actually contacts you, they've already done a lot of research. and you're on the short list, so to speak. So I think it goes back to speed of response and nurturing that prospect or that lead, because they've already done a lot of research. That's part of the buyer's journey, because the information is out there. They can go online, they can get a lot of the information they need, and now they're trying to figure out, okay, I've got this down. And I think this applies, well, I know it applies a lot more to big ticket items, but it's like, okay, which of these 3 businesses am I going to work with? And a lot of times it can come down to something as simple as speed of response, or just, following up with them, picking up the phone, calling them, saying, hey, we noticed you filled out a form on our website, or whatever it is. And sometimes you just have to pick up the phone and talk to people. Sometimes it can be that simple.
Yeah. Great point. Jeff, are you back with us?
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there. I was getting a lot of random drops. We're still in the multiple steps to the journey, right? And effectively moving prospects. So I think, as Ken talked about, leveraging technology is important. But for some of the touches, right, you still have to maintain the human aspect of it. But really, if you think about it, the human aspect may not even kick in till that 5th or 6th touch. If you're using the technology for your website, your retargeting, maybe a postcard in the mail from postcard retargeting, coming back to the website. So leverage technology for some of the touches and the follow-ups, but there's still got to maintain the human element. But the other 2 big things I had is let the prospects drive some, right? When you are in that communication mode where you're talking to them, ask them how they want to prefer. Ask them how they like to be communicated to. Ask them, what they're looking for. Where do they want to go next? So let them do a little bit of the driving, and then adapt where they are in the funnel. I mean, the worst thing that happens is you get somebody interested in making a purchase, and they get a top of funnel follow-up, request, and that's like, well, wait a minute, we just talked. Didn't you get it? So kind of be aware of where people are and let them drive some. And then if they do go dark on you, go back to the, make them say no concept, follow up and maybe offer some suggestions, be tactful, offer them some helpful suggestions. Hey, it's been a while since we talked, been a while since I heard from you. Just wondering what's up. Where do you want to go next? I thought you might be interested in this. I thought you might be interested in that. Give them some directions of where to go next to re-engage. And then you can help get them back and moving through the funnel.
Awesome. I know we're coming up on the hour. Let's finish off with you. It's kind of, you talked about choosing your own adventure there, Jeff. But let's finish off with however each of you wants to, say the last word. But we'll start off with Ken, and I'd say, if you want to talk about trends, because you were kind of saving AI a little bit there, or if you want to just share something that you want every business owner to think about this topic, finish off with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take up a lot of time with this, but I think it's important. AI can be your friend, and it can be a very valuable tool. It can be a tool that helps conversationally get people to book an appointment, just by interacting with a chat bot. I mean, it's very easy to create an interactive bot that can drive people to the right parts of their website to help them find the information they need, to book an appointment, to do a variety of things. So, for example, if you're a kitchen remodeler, maybe a common question that somebody has, and again, you need to research this to see if this is valid, but a common question might be, do you offer financing? Okay, well, if somebody puts that in a chat bot or a text widget, that has automated response capabilities, you can take them right to a page that talks about your financing options if you offer them. And then first of all, it keeps people on your website for a longer period of time. That dwell time does have a nice little, boost from an SEO perspective. Google likes to see that people are naturally navigating through the content of your website and also spending time on there. So I think AI chatbots are really something that a lot of businesses need to start to embrace. I think a lot of people get freaked out by them because, again, they use their own biases to say, I don't want to talk with an AI chatbot. But some of them are done really well and are very helpful. So obviously, don't just slap one out there just to have one out there. But that I think that's a great opportunity. The last thing I would just say is, just think about the goals you're trying to accomplish. I can't remember. I think it was Jeff, maybe, or maybe it was you, Ian, that talked about, defining what outcomes you want. And then you kind of have to back into that to say, okay, in order to get, if I want to increase revenue by 25%, what does that dollar amount look like? What service am I going to sell to make that happen? How many leads am I going to need to get? What's my conversion rate on that type of an opportunity? And just kind of calculate it out to see, and then you can figure out how much you can afford to pay, and how many channels you might need to implement to be able to get those kinds of results. So reverse engineering, I think, can also be a really effective way to look at lead nurturing and lead generation, period.
Awesome. Good points. Jeff.
Yeah, just in wrap up, I'm going to go back to the notions of, know your ideal clients and what they're looking for and keeping up with how that's changing, and then figure out how to continually tap into that and adapt and modify your lead generation. And, here's one of the questions I'll throw out as an ask. Lead magnets, ebooks. I mean, really, I think everybody has enough ebooks already. I think we've evolved past offering ebooks as lead magnets, and they may still have a place for some things and some points of the funnel, but I think there are a lot of other more novel, more pertinent things that a lot of businesses can do. And I use that as an example of things change, and what worked 2 years ago may not be working now. So just got to constantly keep up with it. Listen to podcasts like this, read the literature, or find somebody to help you with it.
Awesome. Great points. Paul?
Well, yeah, I think going off of what Ken said, I think AI is all the rage now, and it can be a very useful tool, but it's not a magic button. And if it's implemented incorrectly, it can probably do more harm than good. So like Ken said, you can't just take an AI chatbot and slap it out there. It has to be done correctly. You have to train it. Because like Ken said, if one of the questions is, do you offer financing, and you haven't trained that bot correctly, it can give the wrong answer. It can say, yeah, sure, we offer financing, and when you actually don't. So just keep in mind, it's still technology. It's still software and algorithms.
I've got one more thing I want to add, if I can.
Yeah.
So this is, this is more sophisticated, and it typically probably happens with bigger businesses, but hopefully it illustrates a useful point for small businesses. Don't assume that people are ready to buy just because they even show a large amount of interest. What drives me nuts is I'll go read a couple of articles on somebody's website. Software companies are really bad about this. And before I know it, I'm getting a phone call asking me for a demo of their software. And it's like, back off, dudes. I am not ready to go out on a date with you yet. I am just here to learn and gather information. So you be careful that you're not driving people away. It's hard enough to get leads. The last thing you want to do are, things that are driving people away and making them run from your business.
Yeah, if I don't recognize the phone number, I don't answer it. And if they can't bother to leave a voicemail, it must not be that important.
Even if they leave a voicemail, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth because it's like, no,
well, yeah, true.
Back off. Leave me alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, guys, this has been awesome. And certainly we had more questions we could cover. Maybe we'll have to do a 2.0 on lead generation, but this is fantastic. So let's wrap it up for this episode. Thank you to each of you for sharing your thoughts and your experience and expertise, and thank you to our audience for joining us today. If you have topics you'd love for us to talk about, send them on in, and we'll consider them for sure. You are our focus group, and we like to keep our ear to the ground. So until next week, keep calm and market on, folks.
Thanks.